As the servant of the high priest last night, I thought I was a very lucky man. And I say again, I thought. You see, I got to carry the lantern. I got to lead the troops. I saw the swords and the spears, and I knew something was up. And sure enough, I had been chosen as the servant of the high priest to carry the lantern, to lead Judas to capture this Jesus that we all hated so much. The time for him to pay had finally come. As we were walking across the valley of Kidron, and then we passed through the olive trees, the tension was mounting, and there was a crowd beginning to form and follow us, even though it was dark and a cold and damp night. We then finally got to the Garden of Gethsemane. I was so angry. I said, this time we'll get this Jesus. Anger just burned inside of me. Who does he think he is? King of the Jews, committing blasphemy in front of everyone, calling himself the Son of God. What horrendous acts he had done. It just turned my stomach. But then, he's always was a troubling man, and I'd seen a lot of him. He was troubling because the way that he talked was just different than any of the other rabbis. The way, I'd heard of the miracles that he had done. And, my mind, my heart, it was just warring against itself. I just didn't have any answers as to how he could do these miraculous things that he was doing. Well, when we came into the Garden of Gethsemane, me struggling to stay ahead of Judas, me leading the way to capture this Jesus, I saw him. I saw a small band of men. Some of them were asleep on the ground, but there was one standing there, and Judas headed straight toward him. And then he did what he did. He kissed this Jesus, and then I knew for sure. As the light hit his face, I knew for sure this was him. And then I heard his voice, and I was absolutely sure. He said to Judas, he said, friend, do what you have come to do. He said, but you betray me with a kiss. I took the lantern even closer, and I held it in front of his face so there would be no doubt. And sure enough, the soldiers rushed to seize him. And it startled the men that were with him, most of them being asleep, and they jumped up, and they just reacted defensively. You could tell they cared about this one. And one of them, a big guy, he drew a sword and he struck at me with it, swung it at me, and I leapt back, but I wasn't quick enough. The sword caught the right side of my head, and I just screamed out in pain, and I gripped my head in my hands, and I realized he had cut off my ear. I said it then, and I know now what I said was important, because I cried out. I said, oh, God, help me. Then I was overcome with nausea. I was just sick feeling, and warm blood was running down the side of my head, and I threw my fingers, and I fell to my knees, and there on the ground there laid my bloody, mangled ear. And amid a blur of tears, I saw this Jesus come toward me. And my first instinct was to try to get up and turn away. I didn't know what he intended, but then his eyes caught my eyes in that dim lantern light. And I was frozen in place. I couldn't move. Those eyes, I've never seen eyes like that before. So warm, and they just were so penetrating, and I could tell then and there they were loving eyes. And then he reached toward me, and I drew back, still not knowing for sure, but I didn't draw back far enough before he touched me. And the moment that his fingers touched the side of my head, there was a different kind of warmth, an incredible warmth. It just flooded my entire body. It was like the sun had just burst through the clouds, even though we're in a dark, damp, cold garden. It was like the sun was shining on me. I had no idea what was happening, but I knew that something was. And even when he withdrew his hand, after that, the warmth remained. Anxiously, with timidity, I reached up and touched my head. I knew something was different. And I found that my ear was whole again. I had been healed right then and right there by this one who had to be who he said he was, the Son of God. And joy just burst forth inside of me. Hey, it was an uncontainable rejoicing. And I was just still frozen there in place on my knees, and I just had this unbridled feeling of exuberance. And then I noticed something else. As the shock wore off, I noticed something else had ignited inside me. I had a hope I'd never had before. I had a faith. I had a belief that this man truly was who he claimed to be. And I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to hug him and thank him for what he had done. I had so many questions, but I knew that truly this was the Son of God. I finally regained my feet, and I turned to find him, and I saw in the distance they were already leading him away, though, in chains. And I ran. I wanted desperately to stop the procession and tell these people that he really was the Messiah, the promised one, that he had come. He was the King, the Son of God. He was my healer. But then I slowed and I walked, and I finally just stopped. I knew my efforts would be in vain, for I was such a lowly person. I was a servant. I was a slave. And so I just slipped into the shadows of the night and stayed there in the garden for a while and just wept, and I prayed like I had never prayed before. You see, I knew what Jesus was about to face. I had seen it before. And even for the worst of the worst, who really, truly deserved it, that cross was torture. And he was about to go through something horrible. You know, it was going to happen. There was nothing I could do. And then a kind of a peace settled over me in that somehow I knew it had to happen. Somehow I knew it was supposed to happen. Somehow I knew that he wanted it to happen. And later on, I understood why Jesus had to die. I could not have saved his life. He was sent to save my life. He was sent to save my soul. And I believed. And when I believed, the healer of my ear became the healer of my soul. And until they kill me also, and they probably will, for speaking his name, I'll tell everyone that this man, this Jesus, this God heals. I don't need this anymore. He heals not only ears, he heals souls, and he'll heal yours as well.